Okay, great. So welcome back to Claiming Your Magic, an online retreat. And I am joined today by Monette Chilson, who I'll introduce in a moment. But I am Molly Reamer, from 30 Days of Goddess. I'm the author of this new daily reader, 365 Days of Goddess. And we are on day 2 of Claiming Our Magic. So our theme our prompt for today, our prompt word for today is free. And our theme is the magic of reclamation, how to support our own sovereignty. And that is why I have a special guest who is going to speak to us about the power of reclaiming sovereignty. So before we begin with that, I would like to invite you to consider today's journal prompt in connection with free. And the journal prompt is, I am free, ... So I am free, whatever that means to you, things that might bubble up as I speak with Monette today. You may wish to jot down thoughts that you have in terms of what you are free to, maybe what you're free to reclaim, maybe what you are free to honor, maybe what you are free to release or let go, maybe what you are free to experience or celebrate or step into. So I am free, ... And I have a poem for us to begin with. So I invite you to take a nice deep breath and really feel yourself settle into your body, into this time and this place where you are right now. Feeling the support beneath you and around you. Feeling the strength of your own body and the fire of your own spirit. Permit yourself a pause in this very moment to come back home, to return to center, to settle yourself back into your skin and bones, to remember you are your own sacred space. You carry your own wisdom and your own magic within you. You have a rich inner life that you can trust and that you can listen to. You were scooped from a pool of infinity to exist in this moment. The original spark of creation dwells within you. Both infinity and creation are made flesh in your very own form. You have both of these sources to draw upon whenever you need them. Permit yourself a pause to be stunned at this magic. So thank you so much for being here, for coming into this space, for sharing your experiences and your wisdom. And I am so pleased today to have Monette Chilson, the founder and creatrix at WomanSpirit Reclamation, here to speak to us. And Monette is an excavator of our sacred feminine lineage. She founded WomanSpirit Reclamation to support women in navigating their awakening from patriarchal indoctrination through online courses and community. She has written and spoken about the divine feminine for the past decade, focused on reclaiming stories of sacred female archetypes and their embodied expression. Her books include Sophia Rising, Awakening Your Sacred Wisdom Through Yoga, and My Name is Lilith. And you can find her work on jointhereclamation.com. As the members of my community, my Goddess Magic community on Patreon, know that I often reference the work of WomanSpirit Reclamation and will quote things from Patricia Lynn Riley, who also is part of the faculty there, and things from Monette as well. So tremendous source of inspiration, encouragement, and support in my own personal life as well. So welcome, Monette. I'm so glad to have you here.
Oh, thank you, Molly. I'm thrilled to be here.
Okay, So my first question, and I know you have some things that you've already thought of to share with us, but my first question is, what does sovereignty mean? What does sovereignty mean? And reclaiming our sovereignty.
Well, first of all, what it doesn't mean, I think like much of our language, it has been co-opted to a patriarchal understanding. So sovereignty feels like power and dominance and control, but it is actually the opposite. Your word, freedom, that is more aligned with sovereignty. And if I had to sum it up in like one sentence, I would say sovereignty is when our inner life matches our outer life, right? It's not like, oh, sovereignty looks like fill in the blank. It looks like what's in here. For each of us, it's going to be different. So that's
wow.
I think sovereignty.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's a perfect expression, because it isn't about controlling other people. And it isn't about I think some people misinterpret it as almost, especially when you're people who are socialized as women and conditioned to be kind and nice and not rock the boat, think that we might be saying you should just disregard everybody else and like burst through, like I'm in charge and my way or the highway kind of thing. And it isn't. It's about, the synchronization or the integration of the inner and the outer. So good.
Yes.
Okay.
And another way we don't want it to be misunderstood, I think as women, we tend to think we should do it all. You know, we should be the mother and the business person and the this and the perfect that. So sovereignty isn't like, oh yeah, I need to do all that by myself, pull myself up by my bootstraps. No, sovereignty is really a communal process. So.
Yes, absolutely. And so that was a later question, but this is a perfect doorway into it, which is, what is the story of WomanSpirit Reclamation? Because this is a community for sovereign people.
It is. WomanSpirit Reclamation definitely grew out of my own work, as all I think the best spiritual supports do. What you do here grows out of your internal work. So my work started, well, more than 10 years ago now, when I started researching my first book, Sophia Rising, Awakening Your Sacred Wisdom Through Yoga. So that was my first goddess archetype to grab onto, because I wanted to be a bridge to people who were still maybe in traditional religions. So I did that. And then I was completely enamored with Lilith, wrote the children's book on that, edited the anthology, did a curriculum. And then it's so beautiful when you look back at your life, how after I wrote that curriculum, then of course I'm going to teach the curriculum. And so I started this at first in conjunction with Girl God Books, and then on my own after that. And it became, the first Lilith circle was so powerful. And I could see that women were hungry to do this work in community. And it also, when we did the first one, I think it was 9 weeks, at the end of it, everyone was like, you can't just leave us. Like, what are we going to do now? And I was like, oh gosh, give me a few weeks and I'll figure it out. And that's when we started our membership program, because I don't think that this work, we're undoing, if I'm 55 right now, I'm undoing all that indoctrination that came before. So you can't take a class and have an aha and then go, woo, I'm sovereign. So I wanted something that was an ongoing process, not a pop in and pop out. So I just tried to pull in, I have authors we have an author chat in her own words, where women come and share this wisdom. We have Meet Her at the Altar, which is different leaders. Molly is leading this month. That bring in that kind of church replacement, the sacred setting, the liturgy. Patricia Lynn Riley is just a wealth of women's liturgy. And we just did her Apple Communion. So we bring in this whole tapestry, and we do it in community. And just like recovering from patriarchy, a big step we took this year is patriarchy is really linked to capitalism. And it just really didn't feel good to us to ever turn down a woman because she couldn't pay what a class was worth. And for our own inner work, that's like detangling my worth from what someone pays for something. So it's this whole rich undoing. So we are now pay what's aligned, which feels really good. And yeah, we have classes too that kind of spotlight different topics, but really it's an ongoing wisdom circle every week, check in. So that's kind of how it evolved.
Okay, great. And I think what really is highlighted there is that the path of sovereignty doesn't have to be a solitary one. And I think it doesn't have to be solitary. And so while we bring forth and we integrate the inner world with the outer world, it doesn't have to be a solitary journey. And I think sometimes what causes people to, they get excited about something and they find a new path and they read the books and they get the oracle decks and that kind of stuff. And then they falter sometimes because they don't, it feels very lonely. It feels very lonely. And like we're making these discoveries and we're cracking open things and we're untying the knots. And then it's kind of like, but is anybody else, is anybody else out there? Is anybody else even noticing these things? And so having a space where you can explore together and where you can explore in a flexible and fluid way, because that's the thing about WomanSpirit Reclamation, is there is not dogma there. There's not a right way. And I feel like that's a lot of what I do with Bridget's Grove and with 30 Days of Goddess, and the work that I do too is I am very clear that I'm not here to tell you that I have the answers and that there is a right way. And sometimes that's frustrating to people because they want to have the answer. They want the little, do this and you're going to be magical and empowered forever and you're never going to feel lonely and you're never going to feel isolated and you're never going to feel forlorn and you're never going to be stressed because poof, it's all magical from this point forward. And but I'm very clear that there isn't like a right answer. I'm not here. I don't dabble in absolutes. I don't deal in guarantees. Like that's not something that I do. And that's what the WomanSpirit community too is like. There isn't dogma there. There's space for a lot of exploration. And that's why it is a community of self-sovereignty together, because you are exploring individually while also being together. Isn't that just magic?
It's magic. And you know what I wanted to bring up, and you were in this class, Molly, one of the most beautiful expressions of self-sovereignty was when we did the vow of faithfulness class. And our culture would tell us, if you're in a class called vow of faithfulness, you must write a vow, you must complete, you must follow the directions. And we had, half the people said vows, half didn't. And we were so honoring both paths, because someone might write their vow a year from now. Someone might, like Tracy, I felt like she was living her vow, like buying her creative magic van. And so it's like everything belongs and you get to have your own expression, and you're not less than if you don't produce the thing. Like there's no thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that reminds me, I had another poem that I wanted to share that I feel like can pop in now about this work, basically. So I'd like to go ahead and share that poem, and then we'll go back to the other things that you had prepared to share with us about the types of sovereignty and the practices for reclaiming it. So here's the little poem. Sometimes we may feel too small and crumpled, too uncertain and unknowing to do the work that is asked of us. We may question whether there is any purpose, whether there is any point or any proof. On a goddess-centered path, we are weaving together shards of the past, scraps of meaning, bits of wisdom, with present moment awareness, body knowing, inner truth, a yearning and a calling. We are making and remaking something all in one, something both new, forged, and eternal. No wonder we falter. No wonder we question everything. No wonder we sometimes fear that faith is foolish and devotion a diversion. This is a work of reclamation, of wholeness and renewal. It is a work of both subversion and sovereignty, of daring and defiance. It is a work of resistance, of rising and rebuilding. It is a work of transformation, a work of heart mending and soul tending. These are no easy tasks. They are essential. We are our own proof right here, right now. These hearts beating, these lungs breathing, these feet walking, these bellies full of questions, these hands and lives and bodies so full of magic. So here we are together with all the questions and all the unknowing and all the wonder all at once.
Before we go into like the specific areas of sovereignty, I would really love to share something that is like new learning to me. I always think it's interesting to share like something I've really honed versus new learning. So this will give you just a little context, I think, for what we're dealing with when we talk about reclaiming sovereignty. So I just spent a month in Scotland. I got back about a week ago. And while I was there, I was in a little town on the eastern coast called Pittenweem. And Pittenweem means village of the cave. And there's a sacred cave there that is known as the cave of St. Fillan, or St. Fillan's cave. And if you Google it, every single reference, you find no other story. That is the story. And I just kept thinking, it just didn't sound true to me, like inside, that inside outside thing. There was all this thing about he was a monk in the 7th century and he had a glowing arm that let him write on his scrolls in the cave. And I was like, I don't know. So I started researching when I got there, and it turns out that that cave, there is absolutely zero historic evidence that St. Fillan was ever affiliated with the cave, in the cave, none of that. The only historical reference is on the charters of the little town in the 1400s. It was called on every map the Sacred Well of Mary Magdalene, or the Sacred Spring of Mary Magdalene. And it wasn't that she was there, but it was where her followers gathered. And then miraculously, about a decade or two after the Reformation, the references to her disappeared. And it started being just a certain spring on the maps. And to me, that was such a poignant example of how our history has been wiped out. Like I was sitting in the cave, breathing in this wiping out and honoring what was there before. And even the fact, this is really new learning, because I was reading this morning in a book about the pre-Hellenic Greek goddesses, our language, everything that referenced the followers of Mary Magdalene called them the cult of Mary Magdalene. Cult has a less legitimate sound. When you're talking about Jesus, it would be the religion of Jesus. It would not be, you would never say the cult of Jesus. So even our language and our history and our maps and all of these things disregard the female sovereignty. So that is why, like, don't think there's something wrong with you. Like, oh gosh, why do I have to reclaim this? How did I lose this? No, you didn't lose it. It was stolen. It was taken away, and now we're going to get it back
generations
together.
ago. Yeah. And generations ago. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's almost always, there's something underneath. You know, there's so many, I'm very passionate about goddess stories, and there's almost always so much underneath. And no matter what we excavate, I'm sure there's even more deeper underneath than that.
Exactly, because the Picts for sure were in that cave having rituals before them, but they were an oral group. I mean, the only thing we have of them are their like cave writings. So we don't know, but for sure, before that, there was something else. So the story beneath the story. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So much.
Yeah. So now we can get to the nuts and bolts if you want to.
Sounds good. I'm ready.
Okay. So it's so interesting when you try to break down something that you talk about all the time in digestible bits. So what I did is I just went through some of the different facets of sovereignty that we deal with. And the first one's going to be very recognizable to Molly. The first example I'm going to give is one that Molly gave me one time. So she's like, what are you going to say? Body sovereignty. Right? Body sovereignty. That's an easy one to grasp because it is tangible. We are here. We are embodied. So if you want to start somewhere, in one of our classes, Molly suggested an act of sovereignty would be go to the bathroom as soon as you have to go to the bathroom. And I was like, oh my gosh, how many times do I say, after I finish this email, I'm going to go to the bathroom? So that's like, let's do that right now. Let's start going to the bathroom. We need to listening to our bodies. That's the beginning of when I said the inner matching the outer. If inside my body needs to go to the bathroom, I need to take my body to the bathroom. So that's one. Eat when you're hungry. That's huge for women because this is, a whole nother course. We did a Love Your Body course. We have a lot of toxic messaging around what we eat and what that means and how that makes our body look. So just the idea of intuitive eating, checking in. Am I hungry? What am I hungry for? And I really try to honor that. And that's a simple, you've got to eat anyway. You're not adding anything to your plate, pardon the pun, but you've got to eat. So just check in with your body. So that's one. And then move as your body wants to move. Again, as women, we are told there are certain ways to move that are better. I see the women walking. If this matches their inner thing, great, where they're doing this, that is not me. I am a meanderer, a wanderer. I mean, I think I probably look a little like Forrest Gump walking through the woods, looking at the things. And that's the way I move. That is aligned for me. It feels not me when I try to walk fast. So walk at your own pace. All those things are things you're going to be doing in a day anyway. Just do them aligned. So,
oh, I love that. Like the things you're, and I'm big into daily practice and devotional practice. And one of the things I always say is fold those practices in. Like when you feel the longing, like I wish for something more special. I wish for something more magical. I wish for more connection. Fold that into something that already exists in your life. You don't have to try to do 50 other things. Like roll that into what's already there. And then your life becomes permeated with these little moments of the sacred, with these little moments of experiencing, with these little moments of connection. So fold it into brushing your teeth or going outside or getting ready to go to bed. Like there's places to fold this in. It doesn't have to be a 50 new things to do or a checklist of how to be a good spiritual person, like,
absolutely.
or how to be a sovereign person.
Yes. Like I think it was when we did maybe this, I believe, or vow of faithfulness. And I became really attuned to the moon, Mother Moon, as my kind of imagery. It was super easy as I was getting into bed to stop and look out the window and say, hello, Mother Moon. It didn't take anything out of my day. It was just a pivot in a moment that I'm already having.
Yes. And that's one of the things I say too, is the moment that you feel that hunger, the moment that you feel that longing, and it could be legitimate hunger, or physical hunger, but I'm thinking more spiritual hunger. The moment you feel the longing, the moment you feel the hunger, the moment you feel that urge, like, I wish there was something else here. I wish for something. That's your doorway. That's your doorway right then. It's your invitation to say like, oh, I can lay my hands against my heart. I can come back into my body. I can take a pause. I can look for the moon. I can I can step outside. Like those are your invitations. Those are the moments. The moment that you feel the pang, that's your doorway. It's right there. You haven't missed it. It's right there.
And I will say, I was thinking this week, one thing that you will discover once you get attuned to this inner voice. I am a big yogi, love yoga, do it sometimes by myself, do it sometimes in class. But once you really build up that voice inside of you, it will tell you what to do next. And the problem is when you're in a yoga class and the teacher's saying one thing and your body is very clearly like, nope, you need this. That is a great practice to do the thing your body's saying. Because I mean, I don't know any yoga teacher who would actually be offended. If they were offended, that is not my problem. So if you're in a class and the teacher's saying, do this, and your body's saying, do that, try aligning with your body instead of the external voice. It's really good practice. Yeah. So that's the body part. The next one I have is relational sovereignty. And that was a good segue because that yoga thing, even though it's aligning with your body, it's also having to do with other people and not listening to those voices, listening to your own. So relational sovereignty, people pleasing is big here. So when your inner voice has a choice that it has made, that it is communicating to you, And if you habitually, I'm not saying it always has to be your way, but if you habitually, like, let's say your whole family's like, where are we going to go to dinner? And you really want sushi and everyone else wants something different, but you automatically defer. Why? Ask yourself, like, is that something that really doesn't matter to you? Like, does Italian sound just as good? But practice discerning that voice in your relationships, because we don't all need to get our way all the time. But if it's a pattern, and if it is important to you, there will be a little resentment and a little misalignment, right? That every time everyone wants to go out, you'll be like, "Oh, we're not going to go where I want to go." So, and then that's this whole like martyr thing that we go into. So just try. And again, it's your family, right? Or it's your friends. They're not going to not like you because you're like, no, I really need sushi tonight. Like, whatever. So that's a good relational, and that's a women thing, that people pleasing. Not that men don't do it, but we are gender conditioned to please. And
one of my least favorite
yeah.
quotes about motherhood is there's a quote that says, a mother is someone who, if there are 4 people and 3 pieces of cake, announces that she doesn't like cake.
Right.
And I hate it. I hate that quote. I read it when I was a pretty new mother. And I thought, oh, this is supposed to make me feel all warm and fuzzy and sacrificial. And I'm like, what I would do is say, let's divide these 3 pieces so everybody gets some. You know, I would cut each of the 3 pieces into 4 pieces and we'd all have a bite, because it's not about I get all the cake and you don't get any cake because I'm so empowered, I'm going to eat all the cake myself. But there is no way that you need to say. So we actually use that as a joke for probably 20 years. Like, if there's, my mom and I will do it together. So there's a plate left at the table, or there's a last serving of whatever it is, and she'll look at me and say, I don't like cake.
I love that. I love that.
Say it back to her. And we'll do it about other things too, like where to go to dinner, or what to do when you feel that nudge inside that is out of alignment. And you know it when you feel it. And so we'll say that to each other. I'll say it to my kids too. Well, I don't like cake. And it is because I call her Martyr Molly. Martyr Molly can sometimes come out, and it's important to like see it when it's happening and to name it, and to, even if it does become a joke, and laugh about it. It brings it out surface so that the whole family sees, like, oh, this is one of those moments in which the mom is supposed to sacrifice what she actually wants. And so we can laugh about it together while also seeing it as it's unfolding in that moment. Like, oh, this is one of those times. This is when that conditioning is going to tell us we don't like cake. We do like cake.
My daughter and I have a joke around Mother's Day, because the cards that they write about mothers, it's all that martyr sacrifice. And she'll be like, I tried to buy you a card, Mom, but none of them were your kind of mom. Like, I really think there are, in my mind, there's the martyr mom and there's the model mom. And when you think about it, what we're doing with our kids is training them to be grown-ups. So they're going to follow what we model. So if we are self-sacrificing all the time, they are going to follow that. We do not want that, especially for our girls who are going to be kind of funneled that way. We want them to say, oh yeah, I remember when my mom ate the cake. I remember when my mom took the trip and missed the baseball game. Like, I remember when my mom took care of herself and valued herself, because then they will take care of themselves and value themselves. And as women, we should not need that motivation of our children. But honestly, so many times I've heard with women, the moment that they really make the shift is when they're like, oh shit, like, I'm teaching my kids. Okay, I got to do better for me and for them. Yeah.
Absolutely. I remember having that experience with I've got 3 boys and 1 girl, and she's 12, and we were somewhere, we were somewhere, and they were doing an activity that she didn't want to do. And she said, I'm going to go sit on the blanket instead. And I was so bothered by the fact that she was going to sit on the blanket, because it was like embarrassing kind of to me that she wasn't participating. And I tried to like encourage her, like, oh, you can go ahead and sit over there anyway. It was like a fire safety demonstration. It was actually super boring and very like, she already knows more about, like, we didn't need to be there. And so I was kind of like nudging her and like pushing her and like bugged that she wouldn't participate in the fire safety demonstration. And then I saw it in the moment and I thought, wow, how many years have I spent trying to undo those knots of doing things to like please other people or to do the right thing. And here I am. She doesn't have that knot tied and I am telling her to tie it. I am telling her to tie it. And so when we left, I apologized to her and I said, you know, I heard myself I, as a grown-up person, have spent a lot of time trying to untie these knots in my own life, in my own, you know, body, in my own way of relating to people. And I heard myself trying to tell you to tie it. And I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry that I did that. And I would like if you know that you don't want to do the fire safety demonstration, you don't have to. Like, and that matters more than making me feel embarrassed because I have the kid who's not participating or whatever. But it was one of those things, I saw it happening, you know, like, oh my gosh, I'm teaching her how to tie the knot right now.
Right. That's right. And there were times with my daughter when I didn't make her do the thing. I'm trying to articulate this right. And now, so she's in her 20s now. There are some things that I didn't make her do that she's like, you know, I regret not doing that. And I'm like, oh, well, so you do it now. Like, you do the thing, that feeling that you know, whatever you missed out on, you're in your 20s, do it now. There was a like 50th anniversary, my parents, and it was out of town and she didn't go. And, you know, there was this mother-daughter charity thing, which honestly, I did not get a lot out of. I was just doing it for her. So when she didn't want to do it anymore, I'm like, that's fine. And just maybe this weekend when I was with her, she said, I wish I would have stuck with NCL. And I was like, oh, well, you can do charity now. Like, you know.
Yeah.
So it's such that's a mother-daughter relationship. It's such a teacher for us. Yeah. Yeah. So on relational, let me see if I have anything else that we actually haven't covered in our beautiful conversation. I have choose your yeses and choose your nos to align with your truth, because you know there's a feeling in you, and you will become more and more attuned to that language of your body when you say yes to something that you really don't want to do. To me, it's just like, oh, it's like the sinking inside. But on the flip side, maybe you say no to something because of a fear or anxiety or self-doubt. So just pay attention to that. Again, it's not a like, oh, you're doing that wrong. Just like check when you say yes or you say no, sit with that. And you're always going to have another chance to say yes or no to something. So that take responsibility for meeting your own needs rather than manipulating someone into meeting them. So and I've been married a really long time, like 30 years. When we were first married, my husband used to say, and we laugh about this now, he's like, gosh, Monette, not only did you want me to do the thing you wanted me to do, but you wanted me to smile. I'm like, yes, I did, you know? And I mean, the things I look back on, there's so much control and like, oh, you have to go to the party because we have to be the couple that goes to the party. And I am so not that person now, although there are times, even habits you overcome. When we were in Scotland, there was one day, we only had 4 days that the whole family was there, all 4 of us. And I had in my mind the family day. Like, it was in my mind and it was going downhill fast. People were like, I'm hungry. I'm not. I want to go see this. And finally, I just threw up my hands and let it go. And then it ended up, we all did our thing all day. And then without me orchestrating it, my son, who's 19, texted the family chat and said, can we all go to dinner? And we did. And we like had deep conversations. And he even told us this like parable, which is hilarious to watch a 19-year-old boy figuring out life in parables. So all that to say, like, we can do these things, but we're still going to fall back into the old habits sometimes, and we can see them. And I told my daughter, I said, oh, that day, it was so hard for me. Because sometimes she thinks I don't have struggles. And I was like, oh, you could see what I was doing right. She's like, I could see, Mom, it was really important to you. And I was like, yeah, it was. But anyway, so those are all my relational sovereignty tips.
Mhm.
Let's see what I've got next here. This doesn't completely capture, I put vocational sovereignty. And I think we think of vocation
That
as
was on my
job.
list too. I think it's so fascinating that we did not say, I'm just going to tell the people who are watching, all I said is we're going to chat about sovereignty and
Mhm.
reclaiming sovereignty. And what I wrote down on my list was personal, bodily, spiritual, relational, and vocational. That was what
Hilarious.
I wrote.
Oh, see, I'm so glad there are other people out here doing this work, and that we share this mindset and this beauty that we're trying to convey. So vocational, a lot of this we've kind of touched on. I said align the way you spend your day with your inner self. And I can already hear, because it's hard when we're challenged on something, I can hear people saying, yeah, but I have to be at my job for 8 hours. This is true. But if that is true and true for you now in this moment, think about your day as the bookends. How do you start it? How do you end it? Even if you have to do the job in the middle, you have control over how you start and end it. So start small like that. I know Molly and I both have practices, how we start our day. And for me, not getting on the darn phone is so helpful. I don't care. There's nothing that important that I need to check it first. So if I can feed my own self first, like today, I don't know why I agreed. I had a call at 9, and then I woke up at like 7:30 and I was like, I don't want to talk at 9. I want to read these 2 books. So I just messaged. I did have to get my phone to message her and say, can we push it back? And then I put my phone away and I read the books I wanted to read. So the bookends are a doable way to align. And then I think also sometimes, because we're so familiar with what goes on in our brain and our heart and our interests, they seem like, oh, of course, like everyone thinks like this. But I guarantee you, if there is something that you are super interested in, borderline obsessed with, is a theme that keeps coming back to you, there's a gift that you downplay because it comes easy to you, those things will inform how you can spend your day aligned with the inside. I always call myself the excavator of, our sacred feminine lineage. And I just get so lit up when I was in that town doing that research. I mean, I met people, I got invited to like local events, and nothing I did would have been on like anyone's, you should do this when you go to Scotland thing. Like, I played Scrabble in the library with the locals every single Thursday. I went to the Preservation Society meeting. These are unique interests to me. And and I went to the archives in Edinburgh. I had a friend come visit me, and I'm like, she's been doing a little research on her family. And I said, you want to go? It's so fun. Like, you have to get a card and you have a passport photo and you go into this room and it's all quiet. And she got there and she started the process. And then she like comes and she's like, I'm leaving and going walking around. I'm like, what? She's like, this is too much. But it wasn't too much for me. It was just enough for me. So if your passions and your interests look weird, it's okay. Like, we all have different paths. So trust. If you are curious, passionate, trust that. That like, if you want to journal, like things that come up during the day that catch your attention, and even though you have the job now, or you have the kids at home, or whatever it is that you're working around, you can start attuning to your passions and gifts and curiosities.
That's what I was going to say also, is that because I've been self-employed for a number of years, and I recognize that there is like a real layer of privilege there to being able to kind of choose my own way and choose my own day. Also, conditioning is such that sometimes I make my own rat race for my own self, where I'm like, dictating that I do this, this, and this. So I do want to acknowledge that there is like a lot of privilege there to being able to choose your own way. And at the same time, I feel like one of the starting points can be, and I'm looking back at one of the first jobs I had when I finished graduate school, which there's a layer of privilege there too, because not everybody gets to go to graduate school and finish graduate school. But my first job after that was such a soul sucking, like it was such a bad job. And, but even in itself, noticing the misalignment, as I was saying, that's your doorway. So even if you're working somewhere 8 hours a day that doesn't feel in alignment with your soul's longing, when you notice the pang, when you notice the sensation of being out of alignment, that's still a doorway. That the doorway into noticing is still a practice of sovereignty. So you can notice this doesn't feel aligned, and you might still have to make the choice. You might still have to do the thing that feels out of alignment, but noticing that is in itself a reclamation of sovereignty, because you know what's happening. And so that in its own self, I think we don't have to be able to synchronize the inner and the outer at all times.
Exactly.
We can notice it though, and the noticing itself is an act of reclamation.
Right. It's part of the process. You can't align until you know.
Right.
And I think there's this whole like first job thread. When you said that, I was like, oh my gosh. So what I will also say is there may be something that you cannot see for the life of you in that job that will come back around to help later. So my first job, communications graduate, I was selling and writing ads for a local cable TV group. So I spent my day driving around in my car, selling people ads, writing the ads, producing the ads. These are TV ads, sometimes starring in them if they didn't have talent, all the things. And it was just like, so the sales thing was so not my thing. Years later, I had the chance to interview for the public relations manager at Time Warner Cable. And I swear the only reason I got it was because I was the only one that had any cable TV experience. I could not have predicted that. So there may be a kernel, there may be a person that's important in your life that's at that first job, a skill, like you said, a knowing this is not me, and maybe a little bit of the job that you're like, but I love this. It's a bigger picture. Yeah.
And you can, I'm currently writing a list of like tiny practices that you can do anywhere at any time, no matter whether you are a cashier at Walmart, you can still do it, And so I'm working on that list, because I think even a tiny practice of reclamation or renewal, or of gratitude, or of offering, or of pause, sacred pause, like even those tiny practices can be rolled into a job that really isn't very fulfilling, but it can still have moments of pause. It can still have moments of presence. It can still have moments of connection that you can kind of roll into it. And so the job that I was talking about was I did Medicaid billing for a managed behavioral healthcare company, and like reports on how many kids ran away that month, how many people got pregnant, how many people did drugs, how many people got expelled. Like that was the job. And unfortunately, I could do it in about 1 hour a day. And then I had to sit there for the other 7 hours. And it was so hard for me. That was the hardest part. It wasn't the job itself. It was the not being able to, and when I finally wrote my letter of resignation, I said, like, I have a lot more to offer than what you are using from me. Like I have a lot more to give. And typing a bunch of ones and zeros into the Medicaid billing is not it. Like that is not using me well or wisely. And I would, and for me, that was, I sat there, I'd calculate the money. I'm like, okay, like what if somebody went by, and I figured out how much I got paid for per hour, I'm like, okay, so what if somebody went by and threw a stack of dollars on my desk every hour? And I'm like, not good enough. I wouldn't want to be here with the dollars. So then I was like, okay, how much do I get paid per, per minute or whatever. So then I pictured like, okay, if they went by and threw quarters on my desk every minute, would it be worth it? And the answer was no, it wasn't worth it. Even if they were throwing pennies at me every second, it wasn't going to be okay. And my final moment is I had a dream that I had a heart attack. I've shared this in the past, but I dreamed that I had a heart attack. I was having a lot of chest pain when I worked there. I dreamed I had a heart attack. And in the dream, I was lying in the hospital bed and I said, now it's okay for me to quit my job. So I was glad I had a heart attack in a dream, because it was what would set me free from the job. And I woke up and I thought, dang, I got to quit the job, because if my subconscious thinks I need to almost die in order to quit,
Yeah.
that means I need to quit. And I have drawn that experience. I was 19. No, I was 21. So I was 21 years old, and now I'm 44. I still remember that dream. I still remember that sensation of lying in the hospital bed saying, now it's okay for me to quit my job. And so one of the gifts of that job was being informed by my inner life, that dream that said, like, you got to get out of here. Like, it doesn't matter what you do, you got to get out of here. And I still remember, and I still draw upon that experience more than 20 years later of having had that experience.
Wow. I'd be surprised if you haven't. Have you read Sharon Blackie's If Women Rose Rooted?
Interestingly, I have not read it. I have it on Kindle,
Okay.
but I have not actually read it.
A lot of that is her experience, and she had to have, I'm finishing it right now. She had many of those dreams that would lead her, and then she kind of gets sucked back in, right? Like the tide. And then she do it, and then she gets sucked back in. But the dreams always brought her back away from what she calls the wasteland, because she's really big into that our mythology, all of it really, even the good mythology, is very human centric, and it has taken the earth and the land out of the equation. So that is part of what she's doing. If women rose rooted from the land, how would it be different? So it's bringing in almost the land as an important character, and not making it all about like the Jungians, in our own head, in our own head, in our own head. No. So anyway, that would be a good one, like for a book study or something sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Sounds good.
So my last one is spiritual sovereignty. And this is probably, even though I'm doing it last,
Oops, I've got a freeze, I think. Oh. Monette, are you still there? Okay, let me see. I'm not sure who is the frozen one at this point.
this is probably where I felt quest for self-sovereignty start arising. It was my attempt to begin to name my
Okay, I'm going to pause for a minute because it looks like we lost Monette, and I'm going to pause the recording and then we'll start it back up again. So apologies for the technical difficulties.
All right. So we're going to kind of end this exploration of sovereignty with spiritual sovereignty. And even though we're doing this last, I feel like this is really core. Like it almost needs to be done first, or it's just so foundational. The way that we have been conditioned in a patriarchal society not to be able to see God in the feminine and the feminine in God. And it's a whole journey to being able to do this. So I remember when I wrote Sophia Rising, and I was trying to align my words on the page with what I felt inside, but it was really scary. I mean, I grew up Southern Baptist, and even though I didn't believe that, I had a lot of that still going through me. And I think there was a part of me that really thought, like, if I say she for God through this book, like something bad is going to happen. But I did it. I was, lightning, right? I really thought, I think for a while, my Twitter bio or something said, called God she and have not been struck by lightning yet. So there's a process of, even though you can believe it, you have to internalize that belief. And it can be a lifelong process for being able to say goddess or she, or, in our community, we have people who are atheists, people who are still in the church, but believe in the feminine part of God. And it all gets to belong. at least in the communities like Molly's and ours. You know, it's all welcome. So there's this whole process of naming divinity and embodying divinity. Let me see what else I put on here. So also, almost every religious tradition is based in a really rich soil of mythology. And again, our cultural indoctrination tends to tell us that the Bible is like this level myth, and everything else is like a story that is kind of interesting and perhaps has some wisdom, but the Bible is up here. And I would say part of the process of reclaiming your sovereignty is to explore all the mythologies and see which one resonates with you. They're all just stories that teach us things. The Celtic mythology that I've been reading about, well, because I was in Scotland, I try to read with where I am. That has a whole different feel. It's got a lot of feminine, a lot of ecology built into it. I am now starting to read about the Greek myths, but the pre-Hellenic Greek myths, which are totally different. So I'm loving that. So just explore your mythology. And I thought, I didn't know if I was going to have a place for this, but I think this is a good, like, 2-second example. In Sophia Rising, Molly's heard this before, I did this linguistic analysis. If you want to see what our myths are telling us. So in the Bible, this is how gender is articulated in the pages of the Bible. So we hear mother 312 times, and we hear father 1,374 times. We hear her 1,595 times, and we hear him 4,573 times. And then this, my friends, is the piece de resistance. Hers 46 times, his 5,386 times. So I contend that we cannot really have ownership of the words in the Bible because the word that denotes our ownership is hardly mentioned. If we can't say
that tells
her,
you right there who owns the stories.
who owns the stories, right?
Shapes the world.
It's the whole thing with the Greek myths. That's why they were the way they were. You know, the conqueror's story gets told. So go on a like mythological adventure and read all kinds of myths, and maybe, I don't know, journal, say however, whatever works for you in a way that you start having some myths that you can read that speak to you. It doesn't matter if it speaks to anybody else. So I think the myth is important. Let's see. Oh, and this is another, like, I love finding examples of things I want to talk about in life. This happened this week too, like I think yesterday. I was in a yoga class, and it was this whole goddess series we were doing, like goddess this and goddess, and she was saying goddess over and over. And then someone in the class sneezed, and she literally went from sink into your goddess, God bless you, sink into your goddess. And I was like, it's so hard to switch to goddess bless you. So hard. So like, find little things that you're going to say anyway. It doesn't have to be, you know, goddess bless you, but like, thank God. Try saying thank goddess, like integrate in like these subversive but integral ways to you, this new belief that you're becoming sovereign for you. Find ways to integrate it into your language and your life. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, well, thank you so much for all these good ideas and juicy conversation. I really appreciated you being here and talking to everybody. It's been great. And I think there's a lot of, there's both theory and practice in what we talked about today, both theory and practice. And so I want to go ahead and close with a poem that I wrote called The Declaration of Reclamation. And I do invite the people who are listening to go ahead. I'm going to pause after each phrase so that the people at home can repeat what I say, because I feel like the Declaration of Reclamation is really powerful in your own voice, at your own in your own space. And so anyway, a Declaration of Reclamation. I figured this is a nice way to end our free day. And okay, so here we go. I am here I claim my voice. I remember I am free to choose. I am here. I claim my power. I remember I am my own sacred space. I am here. I claim my magic. I remember I am whole and holy. I am here. I claim my purpose. I remember I am creative and strong. I am here. I claim my desire. I remember I can trust myself. I am here. I claim my own life. I remember I am a child of the sacred, a student of the earth. I am here. So thank you so much for being here. And I will see everyone tomorrow for day 3 of Claiming Your Magic. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Monette. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye, Molly.